Good morning, everyone. As you're coming on, we are just going to give a couple minutes to get everybody situated. So happy to have you guys here this morning, and we will begin with our FAFSA expert, Jeff Tellin, in just a moment. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at our first live webinar of the school year. We are so happy to have you here at JA Inspire to learn a little bit more about the FAFSA from our resident FAFSA expert, Jeff Tellin. Jeff has been working in higher education since 2009. That's 13 years in higher ed. He's helped thousands of students crack the code to the FAFSA. And I have to tell you, Jeff, when I first met Jeff, we talked for about 5 minutes and I told him all my woes of student loans. And at the time I was paying $785 a month in student loan payments, and a 5-minute conversation with Jeff and my payment was dropped to $50 for just a little bit of paperwork. So he saved me $735 a month on my student loans. And Jeff is really going to talk from experience today. He has a lot of his own mistakes that he made while he was navigating financial aid. And so he's learned from those mistakes, and he has a really great package for you guys today to talk all about how the FAFSA can change your life. So I would like to introduce my friend, my colleague, Jeff Tellin.
Hey, everybody. I am so pumped to be here. And I think what Jen touched on is really important to note, because if you're watching this and you're in high school, you're thinking, why do all these adults, why do they always swarm around me and give me all this advice? Because we screwed up a tad. When we were your age. And we just want to make sure that you don't spend the next 10 or 15 years digging yourself out of the hole that we've had to dig ourselves out of as it applies to financial aid, the FAFSA specifically, and getting out of college without taking on untenable levels of federal student loan debt. But before I jump into the FAFSA, before I talk about why that's so important, let's talk about why education is important. Like, why are we doing this, right? Like, why is college so important? Why is every adult, again, in your life telling you, you should do this? Because high school is relatively easy. You know, if you don't go to high school, again, every adult in your life is going to give you a hard time. So it's just easier to go. But as soon as you've graduated from high school, you don't have to continue going to school. So if you're thinking critically, especially when every adult in your life is going to be very quick to tell you they've already forgotten everything they ever learned in school, right? Did you try to get mom and dad's help on like an algebra assignment? How did that go, right? Not good, I'm assuming. And again, your parents are going to be quick to tell you they don't remember what they learned specifically. So if no one ever remembers what they learned in school, why learn it in the first place? Here's why. And here's hopefully what every teacher is explaining to you. And if they're not, they should. Is it really doesn't matter what you learn. No, that's too far. It does to a degree matter what you learn. But what matters most is that you learn how to learn. Period, right? It's not so much important the specifics of what you're learning right now, but you are learning how to learn. And then eventually you're going to learn how to teach yourself. And that is the skill that you're going to use for the rest of your life. That's going to unlock metaphorical doors for you for the rest of your life. If you learn how to learn, and even though what you're learning right now, admittedly, is boring to a large degree, but that's going to change, and that's going to change really soon. And for most people, it changes in college. You get to pick what you want to study. And I would recommend pick what you're interested in the most, pick something you have a talent in, and your ability to learn will actually carry you through. So to unlock financial aid doors, we're going to get into that. And we're going to get into it as soon as I learn how to advance this PowerPoint presentation. And I was told a particular button would do that for me, and it didn't. Okay, here we go. So yeah, is there anyone alive that says good things that are quoted? Probably, but I typically rely on this one. Albert Einstein, clearly the most unprepared human being for any photograph he was ever in. Maybe in his day, cameras weren't, that common. And, he always looks scared or confused. This time he just looks tired. But this is the quote that I meant to illustrate what I was saying. Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school, right? So just learn how to learn, and you will have accomplished the goal of education itself. So let's talk about the FAFSA, because you haven't filled out one yet, but you might have a brother or sister that did. Your parents might be telling you that they went through this process for a sibling and they don't want to go through it again. And here's why. If you take a look at the image on the left, that's how many individual web pages used to comprise a FAFSA. It's like 35 or 40 web pages, right? That's a Black Mirror episode. Like, we don't want to go through that. So in the 2010-2011 school year, the FAFSA got simplified down to maybe 8 to 10 pages. Now it's more like 7. And now there's even a FAFSA Simplification Act that has been passed through Congress. It's not going to take effect till the 24-25 FAFSA, but it's going to simplify the FAFSA even more. So the FAFSA keeps getting easier. So don't be afraid of it. It's actually going to help you, and it's not going to take an incredible amount of time. And it's coming up really soon. If you're in high school right now, even if you're a senior, you're early, right? You are really early to this game already. The FAFSA for your freshman year in college opens up on October 1st. So just a little over a month away, and you could already be filing the free application for federal student aid to get as much aid as you're possibly eligible for to pay for a college degree. It's going to happen right around the corner. I want to prepare you though, for your parents' reaction to you asking them for help. Your parents are going to say something like this, potentially, that they already know that you're not going to qualify for anything, or they think that filing the FAFSA means that you're only going to be offered federal student loans and they don't want you to be in debt. So they're going to be inclined not to help you. So all of that is parent speak for, we don't really want to do this, right? And you can kind of, you can sort of feel out the tone. Like, when your parent says no, and it's like, I clearly should never bring this up again. Like this is a hard no. This is more like when your parents ask you to do something like, I don't know, take out the trash, and you don't want to do it and you do it begrudgingly. So your parents are only going to feel like lukewarm feelings about the FAFSA until it works the first time. So I'm telling you that you will qualify for something that's not going to lead you into federal student loan debt. And all you have to do is file the FAFSA in order to pull that off. So the first myth is that you're not going to qualify for anything good. You will. So here's everything that you could potentially get by filing the FAFSA, right? You might get the federal Pell Grant. When you see the word grant, think gift, right? Think, I get this, and I'm not going to incur any responsibilities after I graduate. This is just something I get just on the basis of filing a FAFSA in and of itself. There are federal grants. There are grants offered by the school. There's now in Arizona something called the Arizona Promise Grant that guarantees a certain number of students are not going to have to pay any tuition or fees for the entire 4-year career. So everyone wonders, does free college exist? It does, but it depends, right? And I'm telling you that in Arizona, for a lot of you, college could be beyond free. And I'll get into that in a second. Filing the FAFSA can help you get a job on campus. And that job on campus could pay you just, $2,000 to $3,000 additional dollars. But that could be the difference between being able to afford school or not. And filing the FAFSA is going to help you for that. There are private donors. Again, most of them are old and they feel guilty about their success. And that's why they want to donate to younger generations, right? Who cares why they're giving? The point is that they put out a scholarship application. We'll talk about where to find them. They are online right now. And I'm going to make this really easy for you. I'm going to take you right to those websites. And even a federal student loan is offered through the FAFSA. Most of you will not have to borrow, but if you do, there's actually a way to take out a student loan without ruining your life. And I'll talk about that. The FAFSA isn't all based on need. There are other types of awards that don't require any information on how much financial need you're in. And there's only one type of financial aid, though, that doesn't at least prefer, if not require, a FAFSA on file. And that's going to be a merit scholarship, right? So ASU, NAU, U of A, and even all the Maricopa Community Colleges, even Arizona Western College, Eastern Arizona College, Pima Community College, all of them are going to offer some sort of merit aid. And they might not require a FAFSA on file for those. And some of them don't even require an application. Just the admissions application is all you need to get considered for those scholarships. You could get scholarships without even having to apply specifically for them. Just apply to the school, file a FAFSA, and that's all you're going to have to do. All right, so the FAFSA will put together something called, it's a number. Everyone thinks of it as a dollar amount, but it's a number called expected family contribution. Changes to the FAFSA might bring changes to this formula, but basically this is the system that we have right now. So filling out the FAFSA is going to generate all this information. It's going to provide that to the federal Department of Ed. And they're going to take a look at your income, which I'm assuming is not that high. Basically, if students earn $7,000 or less during a year, the FAFSA just considers that the same as earning nothing at all, right? So get your summer job, get the job during the school year. Don't worry about how much you're making right now, because your earnings right now are not going to be factored in until the 24-25 FAFSA. So don't worry about it. All the money that you're making right now is not going to affect your financial aid award for your freshman year if your freshman year is going to start in the fall of 23. So the FAFSA is going to collect all this data and it's going to come up with a number, and it's going to take that number and it's going to subtract it from the cost of going to that particular school. And every school has a different cost. And the cost of going to that school is based on all of these things. Everyone pays tuition, everyone pays mandatory fees, books and supplies, that's a given. Room and board, I probably shouldn't have said board. Do any of you know what board is? Like, we should probably not even say that anymore. That's housing and meals. But I'm so used to that old language. But yeah, it's housing and meals. If you decide to live on campus, that's part of your cost of attendance at that school. Transportation, if you bother to bring a car, although I'd recommend if you're going away to school within Arizona, don't bring a car. And then personal expenses and loan fees are just a tiny amount of the cost of attendance, which again, your expected family contribution that's calculated by the FAFSA is subtracted from this cost of attendance to come up with how much need you're in, right? And for a lot of you, that could be a tremendous amount of need, and that's good, because most likely that means that not only are you not going to have to pay for school, but you could actually get more financial aid without having to borrow, without having to go into debt than it costs to go to that school. And if that's the case, you just get that money and you don't have to pay it back. So more about that later. Let's go into another FAFSA myth. This again is parent speak for, I don't want to do the FAFSA right now, right? You'll ask them for help and they're like, how do I get out of this? They think just like you, by the way, only they're parents. So they're basically going to say, okay, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? Oh yeah, I got to have taxes for the FAFSA and I haven't done those yet. So can't do the FAFSA right now. Here's the thing. The FAFSA for the 23-24 school year relies on tax information from 2021. And your parents, if they haven't filed their taxes for 2021, probably not going to want to admit it to you. But if they, and most likely they have, right? Most likely they've totally done that. So they are actually prepared to file the FAFSA right now. Again, a month from now, FAFSA is going to be ready to go and they're going to want to get out of it, but they can't use this excuse. I am giving you the information to call your parents out. They actually can help you with the FAFSA right now. So forget about that. All right, so here's another one that you might have. You might be thinking, okay, I didn't get the best grades when I started high school. If you're a senior this year and you've been trying to make up for a level of academic performance that you're not super proud of, maybe during your freshman or sophomore year, and you're thinking that your grades are not going to be good enough for you to qualify for a bunch of financial aid. The FAFSA is not based on merit. It's not specifically based on academic achievement. Institutions offer aid that is based on academic achievement, but the FAFSA is not merit-based, it's eligibility-based, right? So what that means is if you are eligible for the institution, the college that you're applying to, just having a FAFSA on file will qualify you for aid, right? If you're eligible to graduate from high school at the community colleges, you're eligible for admission just on that fact alone. So don't worry about it. If you didn't do that well at the beginning of your high school career, it's more important how you're doing now. And if you're in a situation where you are applying for scholarships, you can paint that picture. I didn't used to do well, now I do. Walk me through that process. Why are you doing better now? That's actually more interesting than the fact that you weren't doing that well before, right? So don't worry about that. File the FAFSA regardless of what your GPA is. If you're eligible to graduate from high school, then you're eligible to start college. All right, so here's another one. I know the FAFSA is available now, but I have plenty of time to file. Like you've already heard me say that the FAFSA in about 4 weeks is definitely going to be on the website, ready to submit. You're thinking, yeah, but I haven't applied to any schools and I don't really know what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure all that out and then I'm totally going to do the FAFSA. Okay, so the FAFSA is the one thing you don't want to procrastinate on. You want to get this done as quickly as you possibly can, even before you pick the schools that you definitely want to apply to. It doesn't cost anything to send your FAFSA to the school. And the information that you need to send the FAFSA to a school is embedded into the FAFSA itself. The application tells you how to send it to places. You just pick a school in a directory and it makes sure that all of all the answers basically on your FAFSA get sent to the school of your choice. And you can put up to 10 schools there. Now, obviously, if you never apply to that school or don't get in, that school's not going to do anything with an electronic copy of your FAFSA. But the schools that you definitely want to apply to, that you see yourself possibly being able to attend, put those on the FAFSA even before you apply for admission. Although you can do that now too. But you want to get the FAFSA done early. The federal aid that you're eligible for, you will qualify regardless of when you submit a FAFSA. If you're eligible for that Pell Grant that I mentioned, you'll be eligible for that even if the school year begins and you don't even file until after you begin your freshman year at college. But institutional money is typically offered on a first come, first served basis. So you might be more eligible than other students, but if they get their FAFSA in first, they're going to get consideration for that money and you might not, because that money is going to be awarded to the other students that got their FAFSA in early. Now, everyone that I'm talking to right now, is it okay if you get your FAFSA done early and then other students that I'm not talking to don't get aid because you take my advice? I'm actually okay with that, right? I only care about you right now. If you're listening to this, then you're the one that I'm focused on. I want you to get the money strictly as a result of filing the FAFSA as early as possible. Okay, so what is financial aid, right? A lot of people throw that term around. They don't really know what it is. There's only 3 types. Money that you get. So I've talked about that. You've heard me say the word scholarship. You've heard me say the word grant. You've heard me specifically mention the Pell Grant. That's the one from the federal government. You file the FAFSA, you're going to get automatic consideration for most of these grants. And even the merit scholarship that you could get either at a Maricopa Community College or one of the 4-year schools right here in our state, you don't even have to apply separately for those. You fill out the admissions application and that's good enough. And the reason we call it gift aid is because you just get it and then you don't have to do anything after graduation. There's no, responsibilities to pay it back. There's nothing else that you need to do. You qualify on the basis of your admission, having a FAFSA on file. But there's also a type of financial aid that you can earn. So I want to talk about federal work study really quickly. So federal work study, the reason it's so awesome to get that, and the FAFSA will just ask you point blank, are you interested in federal work study? And you'll think, I don't know what that is. Just say yes, right? Now, in almost every other line of work, don't just take the advice of someone saying to say yes to something. I'm going to explain why you should do it. Federal work study is amazing. It's federal money that gets sent to universities, community colleges, to pay students. That's it. Federal money allocated to pay students. So if you're eligible for federal work study and I am offering a job in my department at the school that I work at, and I know you're eligible for federal work study, that means that I don't have to pay you out of my own budget. 70 to 80% of the wage that you would earn is going to come from a federal government donation, basically to the school where I work. So if you're eligible for federal work study, I know you're less expensive for me to hire. And if I've got one person interviewing for the job and I've got to pay them everything out of my budget, and then I've got you eligible for federal work study, and I only have to pay you about 20% of what I would need to pay the other person, you're gonna have to really bomb that interview for me not to want to hire you, right? So don't worry about it. Say yes when the FAFSA asks you if you're interested in federal work study. And when you get to your school, ask them how to apply for federal work study eligible jobs. And you will have an advantage to working on campus. And again, that's an easy way to make an additional $2,000 to $3,000. And if you're already getting aid to cover your tuition and fees at that school and you don't have any other expenses, then you get to keep that money just like any other job. And it's also better to have a boss that understands that you're a student, right? How many times can you go to your boss now and say, can I not work tonight? I've got a test tomorrow. Are they sympathetic to that? They're definitely going to be sympathetic to that if you get a federal work study job connected to the campus that you're attending. And then the final type of aid, the money that you pay back. So that's federal student loans. I'm sure you've heard a lot about federal student loans. It's in the news every single day. The president just forgave a bunch of people of their federal student loans. And you're thinking, yeah, but I didn't take out federal student loans. So what do I get? Well, right now, you're not in debt. So that's awesome. You get that. But if you go to college, you might take on a little bit of debt. And I can help you do that with, again, without ruining your life. I did it the hard way. I took out too much. I looked at my financial aid awards when I was a college student, and I just assumed everything was gifted to me. I didn't understand the differentiation between, well, this is a loan, so you got to pay this back. And this is a grant from the federal government that will help you get a job. Oh, and this is a scholarship or a grant from the institution. You don't have to pay this back. No one walked me through any of this. So I just made a series of mistakes for a couple of years that took, exponentially longer than that to dig my way out of. You're not going to have to go through that because we are here. And so again, if you have to take out a student loan, it's not going to be the end of the world. And hopefully I get to talk to you again about what a federal student loan means for you after graduation. And again, we're talking about a student loan, not tens and tens of thousands of student loan debt. All right, so where do you find scholarships? I want to go over these really quickly. I highly recommend Googling, but again, you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, so you'll be able to click on these links directly. But if you're curious right now and you're listening to this just on your device, just go right to Arizona Community Foundation, and you're going to see that they have scholarship opportunities for you. Now, they're going to open every year in around January or so, and then the application closes in June. So you've got a 6-month window. And if you get your application in, you're going to be considered for at least 100 different opportunities from people right here in this state that want to give money to students to attend college. So definitely do that. Check into the College Depot with the Downtown Phoenix Public Library. They have a website, a menu of services for college students or students that are transitioning from high school to college. You don't have to wait till your senior year to look into these resources. Get a heads up as to what's out there for you. Be a Leader is an organization that develops young people in terms of a career, but they also offer college scholarships. They offer events to help you file the FAFSA. They're amazing. I've done a little bit of work with them. Arizona Promise Grant, that is something right now that guarantees that if you file the FAFSA and that expected family contribution number that I explained before comes up to 0, that means that you're guaranteed not to pay any tuition and fees for your entire 4 years as long as you're eligible for that. That is free college. So free college does exist in Arizona because of the Arizona Promise Grant. There's also Maricopa Community College scholarships. If you go to that link, you're going to see the scholarships that they offer. They have a presidential scholarship. If you're coming out of high school and you have a 3.25 cumulative GPA or better, if you're not really sure exactly what that means, let's say you're taking 4 classes and you get a B in 3 of them and an A in 1, that's a 3.25, right? You're basically getting 75% Bs, 25% As, that's a 3.25. If you're doing that already, you're not going to have to pay for community college, right? And if you're already at a community college and you didn't get the presidential scholarship coming in, there's an honors high achievement scholarship that's basically based on the same thing. It's not quite as generous, but you still get something. And there's also a full menu of scholarships on the Maricopa site. There are many Arizona employers that are offering tuition reimbursement. I've got a link to that. And then private scholarships are available all over the internet. The PowerPoint will have links to those opportunities so you know where to apply. All right, so I want to talk about Earn to Learn. This is a really interesting opportunity where you commit to saving some money. $500 over a 6-month period. And you can use Earn to Learn money at any of the Maricopa schools or any of the 4-year schools in the state. And if you're able to save 500, then they will match it up to $4,000 per year. Okay, so you get an 8-fold return on the $500 that you're able to save, and you only have to save it over a 6-month period of time. And then there's some other things you have to commit to, financial literacy courses, things like that. And it doesn't go to everyone. You need to be early on this. So you got to go to the website, look into it. They definitely want you to have a FAFSA on file because this is just going to augment the other type of financial aid that you're getting from other sources. But Earn to Learn, it's something we have right here in the state of Arizona to help you. Raise.me, also awesome. So whether you're a senior, whether you're a freshman listening to this, a micro scholarship is where they just give you a scholarship for doing the things that you're already doing, participating in activities in high school or a sport, filing the FAFSA, visiting a college. You'd be doing all these things anyway, applying to other scholarships. If it's preparatory for getting into college and helping you save money, then Raise.me will give you a micro scholarship for that. Those micro scholarships add up, and then you can use them to offset the expense of attending college. Dual enrollment, you can actually get college credit now by taking courses at Maricopa Community College that will then not only help you graduate from high school, but they also will earn you college credit as well. It's one of the best ways to save money in college is to enter college, having already completed college courses. So that's an option. I talk about that. I have a direct link to the Maricopa Community College website. All right, so I want to talk about DACA students. Now, you can file the FAFSA, but you're not going to be eligible for federal government aid or state government aid. But there are private sources of scholarships. And if you're graduating from an Arizona high school, then the rate you pay should only be 150% of the in-state rate. And if that applies at the Maricopa Community Colleges, that rate would still just be about $127 per credit hour. Normally, it's $85 per credit hour. All right, so you might get accepted to more than one school. And it's going to be really difficult to figure out if you get accepted to multiple schools, all of which would be awesome. How do you pick which school you want to go to? Well, price is going to be one of the factors that you're going to consider. And the best way to do that, every single university website by law has to have this net price calculator. And if you just Google the name of the school and net price calculator, you've got to pull it up because it has to be on their site. So I linked a bunch of schools in Arizona with their net price calculator. So it's not so much what school costs, right? It's what school costs minus all the aid you're getting at that school. And then that's what it costs. And so it's going to be really difficult if you just go to the school's tuition and fees and compare those, because it's not about, again, what they're charging. It's about what they're charging minus the aid you're getting. And so if you've been accepted to multiple schools and multiple schools have given you a financial aid award, then the only way to comparison shop to see which one is the most affordable is to use that school's net price calculator. So that's why I have this. And it's really going to help you again, because some of you are, if you don't get into your dream school, there might be several other schools. Some of you are going to realize as you dig in to the information at each college you're interested in, you might have more than one dream school. Might not be just one. You could, think about 2 or 3 that you could easily have a great career at. How do you know which one is cheapest? This is the only way to do it. I want to talk about student loans real quick here. So I said that it's possible to take out a federal student loan without ruining your life. Here's the thing though. A lot of people that have taken up, I'm getting some reactions from the crowd at that statement. So here's the thing. Do you know that there are more people in federal student loan debt that are over the age of 50 than under the age of 25? And the borrowers that are under the age of 25, young people, millennials, you've heard about that generation. They're in student loan debt, but in comparison to the borrowers that are 50 years of age or older, they owe just a tiny fraction. Why is that? Because student loans tend to be, if you borrow too much, they tend to be really difficult to pay off. And so typically the rule of thumb for me is if you're getting a bachelor's degree and you have to borrow, if you can stay below $10,000 of federal student loan debt, that's going to guarantee that your monthly payment after you graduate is less than $100 a month. Now, most of you for your undergraduate degree, you're not going to have to borrow. Maybe not anything at all, but you might want to get a master's degree one day. So that rule of thumb would apply at that level as well. All types of ways to cover the cost of a master's degree that don't involve going into debt. No time to go into those right now. Plus, we're jumping the gun. We're just talking about getting a bachelor's degree at this point. So it is possible if you know some things, right? It's like if I were to say to you, is jogging or running a good activity? You would say yes, but it depends, right? What if you're running in the Grand Canyon without a water supply and no one knows you're there? What if you're running from something or someone that wants to hurt you? Swimming, right? Swimming is great, but if you're wearing pants while you're swimming, that might be an involuntary form of swimming, and then you're thrashing about trying to like save your own life. So in those instances, this awesome thing is not a great thing to be doing, and it could be life-threatening. I would say the same thing about taking out a federal student loan. It's not necessarily a horrible thing to do if you have to do it. Context matters. And so if you plug into a service like this, if you have questions today about how to avoid student loan debt, or if you can't completely avoid it, how to make sure that that student loan debt is not going to be a lifelong thing for you, I can answer those questions. And we're at the Q&A right now. So I know that some questions have been coming in while I've been talking, possibly, that I can answer.
Okay, and then you just tell me.
Yeah. Jen's going to pop back in.
Hi guys, so we're going to do a Q&A real quick. At the bottom of your screen, there is a little Q&A icon. If you have any questions as we start talking here, you want to fill out some questions, that would be great. And first question is, do I have to have my parents' help to do the FAFSA, or can I do it alone?
That is a really good question. Okay, so you might do the entire thing yourself in terms of answering the questions, but there's a portion of the FAFSA that needs your parents' information, right? Obviously, you know your parents' address, I hope. So that's pretty easy, but there's going to be other things that you're going to need to put on there, like the social security number. And then when it gets to your parents' tax information, you might just have to ask them, but the entire time you're the one actually with the website answering the question. So if your parents are afraid of technology or they're not comfortable filling out an online form, you can do the filling out the form part, but you might need to ask them the answers to some of the questions. And also the tax information, sometimes because the FAFSA requires a federal income tax return from a few years ago, it's hard to find that tax form. It's not readily available. It's not lying around anywhere. But the FAFSA itself has a link to the IRS, and that tax information can be automatically transferred into the FAFSA. But in order to make that link work, you're going to have to ask your parents some questions. And then lastly, your parents are going to need, or one parent is going to need to electronically sign the FAFSA. If your parent has a social security number, then your parent has to create a federal student aid username and password. It's as easy as creating any other federal or username and password. So don't worry about that. They just need to sign it. And the FAFSA is done once per year, not once per like fall and then spring. It's once per year. It's an annual thing. And as long as they hold on to that username and password, the renewal of the FAFSA doesn't make you enter all that information again. All you'd have to do is update the tax information. So yeah, you do need your parents, but you can be the one filling out the application the whole time. So I think we have some more questions.
Yeah, thanks. Next question. Can you refinance your student loan to reduce interest?
Such a good question. Okay, so federal student loans, typically, when you file the FAFSA and get offered a federal student loan, the loans that are offered to you as the student are not based on credit, right? You didn't have to submit a credit application. The FAFSA is not a credit application. It does not need any information really about the income that the student is earning. Because again, remember when I said that if you're earning $7,000 or less, and your parents have to be on your FAFSA and you're considered a dependent student, none of that income will count against you on the FAFSA anyway. So the loans that you get through the free application for federal student aid are not based on credit, but they're federal loans. Your lender is the Federal Department of Ed. And you can't refinance the interest rates that you get on those loans unless you consolidate with a private student lender. And you might get a lower interest rate, but the repayment terms with a private lender are much more difficult. For nearly the past 3 years, the federal government has allowed federal student loan borrowers to not have to make any payments, but private student loan borrowers didn't get any of those benefits. So even though you might get a slightly lower interest rate on the fixed rate of a federal student loan, if you go to a private lender, it's still going to cost you more money if you do that.
Can you explain the importance of having a FAFSA ID?
Yeah, the FAFSA ID is basically your login to studentaid.gov. So you can do more than just fill out a FAFSA with that ID. You can look up information about how much debt you've borrowed. You can log on to studentaid.gov and complete other processes that are related to your financial aid. Like, for example, let's say you want to become a classroom teacher. There are things that you have to do on studentaid.gov that you're going to use your login in order to complete, so you can get aid that is specific to teachers. If you do take out a federal student loan, you're not done just in accepting the loan with your school on your school's website. You got to go back to studentaid.gov and complete other processes there. So all the information about any activity between yourself and the Federal Department of Ed is tracked on studentaid.gov, and you got to have the FAFSA ID to log in and view all that information.
Okay, I have two questions relating to parents. The first is, what if I'm independent of my parents? And the second one is, what if my parents are immigrants? Can I still do the FAFSA?
Yes. Okay. So if your parents immigrated to the United States, but you're a citizen, you have a social security number, then you can definitely still file the FAFSA. The only difference is that your parents, if they don't have a social security number, cannot create a federal student aid username and password. So when you get to the end of the FAFSA, you're going to print the FAFSA off. There's a physical signature page, and you'll have your parent physically sign the FAFSA and then mail it into a PO box. And then when the federal student aid department gets the physical signature for the FAFSA, they will communicate back to the school that has your electronic copy of the FAFSA on file. And then your electronic signature will merge with your parent's physical signature, and then the school will be able to award you financial aid. And then there was another part of that question I want to.
You're independent of your parents.
Independent of your parents, that's right. Okay, so there are a number of reasons why your parents, now if you're financially independent, that in and of itself does not allow you to leave your parents off the FAFSA. Now there's some instances when the parent just refuses to participate in this. And if that's the case, then your school will help you file what's called a parental non-disclosure. And what that means is the only thing that you'll be eligible for from the federal government is an interest accruing federal student loan. But from the institution, you could still qualify for merit aid on the basis of having that FAFSA on file. Now, if you're truly, if you're like in a legal guardianship, then you're an independent student. Now, but if someone has legally adopted you, then they would have to be on the FAFSA. Where it gets tricky is if, one parent is on the FAFSA, but your other parent is not. If your parents have divorced, then it's going to be your biological parent and a step parent. And if you have another biological parent that doesn't live with your other biological parent, you've got to sort out which parent provides you with the most amount of financial support. If there's one parent that provides a little bit more support than the other, or that you live with more often than the other, then that determines which parent goes on the FAFSA. But this information, again, when you get the PowerPoint, will be in the PowerPoint for you.
Okay. The next question, can you explain public student loan forgiveness, PSLF?
Yes, public service loan forgiveness. Okay, so that law was signed a while back in 2007. So what it does is it removes some of the disincentive to going into certain types of professions like education, social work, working for the government in some way, or working for a nonprofit tax-exempt agency, right? So if you have that type of job, the thinking is that you might not make as much as if you were to get a job in the private sector for an actual business. But a lot of those jobs require not just a bachelor's degree, but many of them require a master's degree, an advanced degree. So as a result, you have to go into debt, but then simultaneously, you might not be making as much money. But if you're following your passion and you follow what you want to do, you tend to want to do that anyway. And so in order to remove the disincentive to going into those careers that might not pay as much, but require a lot of additional school, there is a program to forgive you of the debt once you've made 120, which is 10 years worth of payments on your federal student loans. And those payments are adjusted according to your income. So you make payments not on the basis of what you owe, but on the basis of what you earn. And as a result, those monthly payments are much more affordable And also the way it used to work is that if your payment did not cover the interest on the loan that you are hoping to be forgiven of, then a lot of that interest would capitalize and add on and your debt would grow. That's no longer going to be the case. So it's even easier to qualify. And again, you get to follow your passion, you get to pursue the career you want, even if it's not incredibly high paying. And even if you have federal student loans, you can get out of that debt. And it's not going to be a lifelong thing for you. Once you've made those 120 qualifying payments, you are forgiven of an unlimited amount of debt, and you're not taxed on the amount of the forgiveness. So it's a really good program.
Where do I look for a work study job?
Okay, so you look for a federal work study job on the institution's website. So student jobs are typically posted on the school's website. And sometimes you can do an advanced search where you can drill down into just the jobs that require federal work study eligibility. And so if that's the case, then you know that there are jobs that specifically want you to apply. And if you look on your school's website, you're going to find them. Reach out to the people that are hiring you and just make sure you get an interview. And if you do, make sure you tell them that you're eligible for federal work study. You're going to have a really good chance of landing that position.
Thanks, Jeff. I think this question is related to the room and board piece of financial aid.
Okay.
Do students live off campus after freshman year?
Okay, a lot of four-year schools will not so much require, but strongly advise students to live on campus. And because they're making that recommendation, and the reason for that is because they really want you to get used to being a college student. It's a culture shock because then you realize, well, now I'm always at school. Like you're literally every single second of every day, you're at school, whether you're in class or not. That's a big thing to get adjusted to. You're probably never going to live that way again, where you're embedded with members like your peers and you're all doing the same thing. But it's such a unique experience and there's so many benefits from it that most schools are really adamant that you have that particular experience to live on campus. And as a result, most four-year schools guarantee housing for all freshmen. And after the freshman year, though, most schools do not have enough housing to offer an on-campus like residence hall room or a student apartment to every other student that wants one. It doesn't mean that you can't live on campus again. It just means it's much more difficult after your freshman year because the school is no longer guaranteeing that you'll have a spot. And again, sometimes living on campus can be more expensive because not only are you paying for the residence hall, but you also have to purchase a meal plan. In some ways, it can be less expensive because if you have a job on campus and you're attending class on campus, it's just easier to get to work. There are fewer transportation costs. It saves you time. But you've got to work out those details beforehand. And if you have enough aid to cover not only tuition fees, but housing and a meal plan, which by the way, the meal plans, there's typically many different options. And most students I know don't literally get to a dining hall 3 times a day. They're lucky if they get there twice a day. So you can always purchase a less expensive meal plan. But if you have enough aid to cover all of that, then I highly recommend it, at least for your freshman year.
All right, guys, last call for questions, last chance. If you have something you want to know, throw it into that Q&A at the bottom. And we'll see. So Jeff, why don't you explain how you saved me $735 on my student loan payment? He's my Geico. Geico Jeff is what I call him.
Because a 15-minute conversation with me can help you save 15% or more on, or in Jen's case, like 85% on your federal student loans. Super easy. So, you know, in the way they come up, remember I said before that when you want to qualify for the forgiveness program, they base how much your monthly payment, that you have to make 120 qualifying monthly payments, and they base that payment on what you earn, not on what you owe. And that ordinarily will save you money unless you're married and are filing jointly with your spouse. And then it's not just your individual salary, it's your entire household salary. And so as a result of Jen's entire household earning too much money to qualify for a decent monthly payment on her federal student loans, she was never going to qualify for forgiveness because the best deal she could get would get her out of debt anyway in 10 years, but would get her out of debt in 10 years, but with much difficulty, right? And so I realized, well, all you have to do is file separately, not separate from the spouse, stay with the person. I'm not saying break up with them, I'm just saying that file your taxes separately from them, and then it isolates your income from your spouse's income. By the way, I think a lot of teachers are going to be hearing this at some point. Listen up. So it separates the income from your spouse, isolates your income, but then if you have dependent children, you still get to count them in the calculation for what your monthly payment would be. And that's why her payment was so much less after we had her file separately. Now, there might be some tax consequences to filing separately, but I bet those consequences are not going to be as bad as saving so much money on your student loans every month and then getting forgiven eventually is good. And so that's how it's done. That's how I saved her so much money. That's probably why we still hang out. There might be other reasons.
That's
There
the
might be
only
other
reason that
reasons.
we're friends.
Yeah.
No more questions.
No more
Okay.
questions. All right.
All right.
What do we do now?
I'm gonna hop over in front of it.
Okay,
in
yeah,
front of you.
cool,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. Hi.
Thank you guys so much for attending our first webinar. Just a reminder, we've got 3 additional webinars coming up this semester. They are always the last day of the month. So today's the 31st of August. Our next one is on September 30th. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things this year. How can teens find leadership positions? How can teens find role models in unexpected places? And we also have a very special guest coming from Amazon, not Jeff Bezos, coming from Amazon to talk to us about day in the life of being an Amazonian. That's what they call themselves. So thank you so much for attending today. We hope to see you next time. As soon as this webinar ends, it will move over to the on-demand side of the auditorium. So when you got into the auditorium today, you click the screen, you click live and upcoming, and there was a link. As soon as this is done and recorded, it will automatically move over. So if there's something that you wanted to share with your parents, you can show them the video in its entirety. And attached to that will be Jeff's PowerPoint with all those links for you guys. So thank you so much for all your questions, and we'll see you soon.